Hello future tech leaders, I am Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
Let's move further. Now, the next thing that you see over here is your application gateway. Now, like we mentioned in yesterday's session, whenever it comes to application gateway, as far as application gateway is concerned, application gateway is more to do with your HTTP and HTTPS protocols. It is specialized for these protocols. Whereas if you look at Azure Load Balancer, it is for a base set of protocols such as TCP and UDP. If you look at your application gateway, your front-end IP over here, what this will allow you to do is this will allow you to accept your FIFQDNs, your DNS resources that you have, front-end IP, public IP that you have. Behind the scene, it will map to your HTTP TTPS listener. You have to configure your listener over here. Certain things will remain same, but there are other things which will change over here. Along with your HTTPS listener, you can configure your verbs over here. You can specify your configuration details over here. Apart from this, you can specify your HTTP TTPS settings using the load balancer rule. Now, this load balancer rule will remain same. One of the core advantages of application gateway that we have is it can connect to different type of resources. Connect to virtual machine is virtual machine skill set, which is representation of infrastructure as a service components. Along with that, it can also help you communicate with Azure App Services, which is PaaS service. If you see your Azure Load Balancer as a service, it cannot help you connect with your Azure App Service. Secondly, this can also help you communicate with your on-premises or external app servers. This is another beautiful aspect of application gateway. Azure Application Gateway can also connect with your on-premises environment using a gateway. Or you can also use your side-to-side connectivity. That is the beautiful part about application gateway as compared to other load balancers that we have. If you look at something like front door service, though it is working on HTTP, HTTPS, it cannot help you connect to your on-premises environment. It will only help you communicate, or it will only help you work with your Azure-based resources or web-based resources running on cloud platforms. That's the core advantage of using application gateway. It helps you communicate with infrastructure components on Azure, outside Azure, and also using PaaS services. Now, all these things you can add within the backend pool. Things like backend pool, your rules that you are creating. These are all part of these are similar to your earlier load balancer. If you look at your application gateway, as part of application gateway, how it works is whenever you are receiving an incoming request, this will be an HTTPS request. You have your listener, you have your SEL certificate configured over here. Once the encryption is being done, you can specify your HTTP settings over here. And on this routing, you can specify your routing rule, which will convert all these HTTPS requests into HTTP. All communications that could happen behind the scenes would be using a HTTP rather than HTTPS. What you can do is you can do something like offloading of sessions or offloading of HTTPS for faster communications within your backend environment. These things you can configure as part of your application gateway. Along with this, the third aspect that you will see over here as an advantage of application gateway. Here you can do something like path-based routing. When I have number of resources within the pool, I know that which of these resources will need high-end processing, on which machines I have high-end processing, on which machine I have average processing. What I can do is I can use a path-based routing. Depending upon what is the URL path given by the user, I can redirect that to a specific set of machines. Right. Now this configuration-based routing or path-based routing can be done because all these requests which are coming are HTTP, PURLs. Right. I can check for those URL paths and redirect it to a specific member. I'm not sure if this one. I can also have something called as multiple site routing, which means if I want to create a multi-domain kind of application or multi-tenant applications, even those things I can implement by using application gateway. Not just the path, but also if the DNS is being changed or the DNS request which is coming in, I can map it to a different set of resources. You all can imagine this. As for each user, I have a different set of VMNs or I have a different set of combination of IaaS and PaaS services. Where I have SQL database being configured, I have web application being configured targeted towards that particular user. Right. This is what I can do using application gateway routing. Both will have the same IP address. Both these users, Contoso and public IP address, both are same IP address, public IP. This is not a public IP address, this is a DNS. They will have a different DNS mapping. When they have this DNS mapping, depending upon what is the DNS which is coming in, it will be behind the scenes. But it has to go through application gateway, right? The URL being shared or the DNS will be shared or mapped to your application gateway. The application gateway has two IP addresses or one. It has a single IP address, but it has mapping with two DNS. Once the DNS is being mapped, once the request comes in the application gateway, it will map to respective members behind the scene. If you look at your gateway routing over here, it can help you do redirections like I showed you earlier, right? Rewrite your HTTP headers. Any additional information you want to add over here, you can do that. We may also configure custom error pages here. And all these features that you see are part of your application HTTP application that we are deploying. If you look at the configuration over here, this is what I was talking about, SQL offloading. I can do SQL offloading from HTTPS to HTTP. You can define your front end IP like we did it in front end IP configuration. Behind that we have a listener. Your front End IP will be client-facing, mapping to the listener behind the scene, where you have your certificates being configured. Behind the rule that you're creating, you'll have your HTTP settings. I can have respective stickiness or probes or whatever timeout you want to mention. And for taking these requests and processing it, you have your back end pool over here. And within the back end pool, you'll have your VMins, your virtual machine scale set. You can have your app services over here. All these things you can create within your back end pool. Within Azure portal, let's go and create an application gateway. Whatever name you want to give to this. Region Southeast Asia. Now, if you look at the tiers over here, you have standard V2, you have your WIF-based application gateway as well. When you associate WIF over here, what we are doing is we are associating your Web Application Firewall. Any of your resources, which is filtering of network traffic, checking of OS 10 rules, top 10 rules like XS, CSRF, other issues that you have, generic web application issues that you have. All those filtering can be done using your WebAF gateway itself. Right? What we'll do is, while creating the application gateway, let me choose WebAF v2, which will automatically take care of the OS rules while we are creating this application gateway. We don't have to create two resources here. Just one resource should be sufficient. Maximum instance count, minimum instance count, maximum instance count, how many you want. How many minimum maximum instances you want. What is the firewall status that you want? Let me take firewall status as enabled. For all requests, it should filter through it. As far as firewall mode is concerned, what do you want? You want to detect it and generate a report for it. Or you want to stop these attacks or stop these OS rules that we have mentioned. Stop all the unwanted requests that we are handling over here. In terms of availability zone, we can mention these resources here. Zone 2, Zone 3. Each machine that we are creating. If you see this, each of these are virtual machines which Microsoft is creating behind the scenes and managing it for us. I don't have a virtual network right now. I deleted everything yesterday. Let me create a new virtual network with the default values. Here, what we are configuring is your resources. In terms of number of instances you want. It is Application Gateway with Web Application Firewall. Let's move further. In terms of front-end resources, like we did in basic load balancer, here what we can do is we can specify, as you remember, we had internal and public resources. Here also you have public and private options available. Depending upon whether you are hosting a web application or in case of Azure Load Balancer, there I mentioned about database. In this scenario, there is no database because database will not run on port number 80 or port number 880. When are we going to use this one? When are we going to use private over here? It is internal gateway like text environments. Path. Or we have something called service APIs. Certain APIs that you have which I don't want to publish publicly. I want to use it for internal purposes. There are application services or application components that I want to use internally. And for those communications, I want to use private front-end configuration. Let me go ahead. Specify name over here. CF, whatever name you want to give. Let's go to the backend section. Now, here you see, once the front-end configuration is done, let's go to the backend configuration. Let's add a backend pool over here. I can add a backend pool without target instance. You have to mention your machine's FQDA. Like we mentioned, IP addresses over there. Here you need to mention IP addresses. You can mention virtual machines, scale sets, app services. All these things you can add over here. As of now, I don't have any of these resources. I will create a backend pool which is empty without targets. We can add these targets later as well. Not an issue. Now, this is a very important section. Like how we had backend rule configuration. Same way, you can add members over here. The front-end IP configuration is done already. Let's go to routing rules over here. You can specify whatever number of rules. This is actually a collection. You can add as many number of rules as you want. Let's mention the rules over here. What is the protocol that you want to use for communicating with external users? If we have SSL certificate available with us, we can map it HTTPS over here. What is the type of listener you want? You want a basic listener with path page routing, or you want to use a multi-site or different set of domains. That's our choice. If you want an error page URL, what will be the pages that you have deployed within your app service or within your virtual machines? Mention the path over here. Or those custom pages. This is your front-end listener configuration. In terms of back-end targets, you can associate your rule over here. I don't have any HTTP settings for now. Let me add a new one. Do you want OK-based affinity? Do you want to do connection draining over here? Depending upon what is the current application that you want to connect to. In the back end pool, you can specify those HTTP settings over here. What is the request timeout that you want? Those things we can add over here as part of your back end targets. If you want to do a redirection to an external site, remember we were mentioning about on-premises environment and connectivity like that. You can associate that with your external site over here using redirection. Any kind of path page rule that you want to create. What is the path that you want? What is the target that you want to communicate with? These kind of changes, these kind of path resources you can mention over here. Let's go ahead and click on Add. We have added a listener over here. For the front end configuration, we have added a back end target over here. Maximum changes that you will see. For whatever values that we have discussed as part of the architecture, maximum of them are getting configured using the routing rules. Depending upon your back-end pool, back-end targets, you can mention these resources here. Like I said, these routing rules are collections. You can add a second value as well. How many rules you want to add over here? Once you're done with the configuration, we have done a respective mapping with back-end pool. You can go ahead and click on Create. Once it's up and running, it can be edited again, right? Yes, it can be edited again. What we have done right now is we have got a Web Application Gateway. With Application Gateway configured. But right now, this back-end pool that we have mentioned, this is empty. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.